1% Alternate Assessments, Part 1. This PowerPoint is the 1% Alternate Assessments, Part 1 of 2. It covers the background of 1% assessments nationally and in Maryland. It further discusses the National Center and State Collaborative NCSC framework adapted to align with the Maryland College and Career Ready Standards, MCCRS. Part 2 covers instruction as related to Maryland's 1% alternative assessment for students with significant cognitive disabilities. This document was developed and produced by the Maryland State Department of Education through federal funds. The Towson University Teaching Modules Development Team was led by Debbie Gartland, Project Director. On the team also were Roberta Stroh-Snyder, Val Sharp, Michelle Pascoe, Lenore Chapman, Jessica Kirchen, Jessica Moore, Rebecca Malloy, and Darlene Fuster. Thank you to all the content experts and others who provided feedback on the teaching modules as they were under development, including Towson University faculty, staff, and teacher candidates, and school system and MSDE personnel. No Child Left Behind, NCLB, required that all students, including students with disabilities, be included in state accountability testing, but allows participation of students with the most significant cognitive disabilities by taking an alternate assessment. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act, IDEA 2004, also requires that states provide an alternate assessment when implementing statewide accountability systems. An alternate assessment is an assessment designed for students with significant cognitive disabilities who are unable to participate in a regular assessment, even when accommodations are provided. The United States Department of Education released 2003 regulations that allowed states to use a 1% rule for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities in reporting results. That is, states and school districts have the flexibility to count as proficient and advanced the scores of students with the most significant cognitive disabilities who take alternate assessments based on alternate achievement standards. The number of scores counted as proficient or advanced, however, cannot exceed 1% of all students in the grades tested, which amounts to about 9% of students nationally. Without this flexibility, those scores would have to be assessed against grade level standards and would be considered not proficient. A number of school districts across the country have reportedly failed to make adequate yearly progress solely because of students receiving special education. This flexibility allowed more schools to meet AYP. In 2004, the U.S. Department of Education released guidance on exemptions from the 1% cap, known as waivers. To get the waiver from the cap, states had to provide a lot of information, an explanation of circumstances that result in more than 1% of all students statewide having the most significant cognitive disabilities and who are achieving a proficient score on alternate assessments based on alternate achievement standards. Also, data showing the incidence rate of students with the most significant cognitive disabilities, and an explanation of how the state has implemented alternate achievement standards. National initiatives for 1% assessments. 2 national consortia were formed to create alternate assessments for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. The Dynamic Learning Maps and the National Center and State Collaborative. Dynamic Learning Maps, DLM, and the National Center and State Collaborative are the two largest initiatives providing support for 1% assessments. Both offer alternative assessments. DLM uses learning maps to show where students are currently and where they need to go and what they need to do to get to their destination. Essential elements are represented by nodes. Nodes on the map represent knowledge and skills the student needs to attain. States began using DLM assessments in the 2014 to 2015 school year. NCSC. The National Center and State Collaborative, NCSC, is a project led by 5 centers and 24 states, 13 core states, and 11 Tier 2 states, to build an alternate assessment based on alternate achievement standards, AA-AAS, for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. Maryland has chosen to work with NCSC. The goal of the NCSC project is to ensure that students with the most significant cognitive disabilities achieve increasingly higher academic outcomes and leave high school ready for post-secondary options. NCSC is developing a full system intended to support educators, which includes formative assessment tools and strategies, professional development, and management systems. NCSC offers a curriculum, assessment, resources, and professional development. They also consider community as part of post-secondary. Here are the states participating as NCSC partners. Where does Maryland fall? Maryland has participated with NCSC as a Tier 2 state and was part of the field testing 2014 to 2015. Tier 2 states provide usability and sustainability tests before NCSC releases them for broad dissemination in 2015. Tier 2 states agreed to implement the final NCSC resources into their current training and dissemination mechanisms. They agreed to provide feedback on usability and outcomes using NCSC provided tools and protocols for each product and process. Alternative assessments are used to assess student attainment of language arts, mathematics, and science mastery objectives that are aligned with grade level Maryland content standards. The resources listed on this slide were used in the preparation of this PowerPoint. Alternative assessments in Maryland. Alternative assessments are used in Maryland to assess a student's progress and are designed for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. Maryland will continue to use Alt-MSA for science, but English, language arts, and mathematics will be NCSC assessments. Why was the Alt-MSA developed? Taking the alternative assessment after instruction provides students with significant cognitive disabilities the opportunity to participate in the general curriculum in a more meaningful manner, while Maryland meets the federal mandate. COMAR, which is the Code of Maryland Regulations, mandates instruction in several areas. How does this affect students with disabilities in general? Students with disabilities are all considered eligible for PARCC unless they meet the criteria for alternate assessments. Participation guidelines are found in the 2016 Alt-MSA Handbook. Note that in order for a student to be eligible to take Alt-MSA, the student must meet all the following criteria on these 3 slides. The decision for which assessment is appropriate for each individual student is made by the student's IEP team. A student with the most significant cognitive disability will participate in Alt-MSA if he or she meets each of the following criteria. The student is learning at emerging readiness and/or functional literacy levels in Maryland Science Content Standards objectives. And the student requires explicit and ongoing instruction in functional skills. And the student requires extensive and substantial modification of general education curriculum. The curriculum differs significantly from that of their non-disabled peers. They may learn different objectives, may use different materials, and may participate in different learning activities. And the student requires intensive instruction and may require extensive supports, including physical prompts to learn, apply, and transfer or generalize knowledge and skills in multiple settings. And the student requires extensive supports to perform and participate meaningfully and productively in daily activities in school, home, community, and work environments. And the student cannot participate in the MSA or HSA even with accommodations. Students not meeting all the criteria above will participate in the MSA Science, PARCC, and/or HSA with or without accommodations as appropriate based on their IEP. The Maryland State Department of Education will monitor use of these criteria and plan to update the participation guidelines during the 2015-16 school year. Students will take the NCSC assessments online. Students who use assistive technology may have accommodations to use during the testing. There is a paper pencil option for students needing this accommodation. It is crucial for each IEP team to work toward developing a student's functional and interactive communication system through persistent and consistent interventions that are used in their daily settings. For some students with complex communication needs, the augmentative and alternate communication supports provide a bridge while supporting them to develop functional speech. For some students, the use of AAC is the alternative mode that gives them access to the community and the world of learning. Maryland adopted the NCSC instructional framework because research supports the use of standards-based curriculum that is aligned to alternate grade level instruction with real-world learning applications to improve a student's independent level in both their current and future environments. This graphic is from the Maryland State Department of Education's Spring 2015 NCSC newsletter, Volume 1, Issue 1. The newsletter is published quarterly. As you can see, curriculum, instruction, and assessment are the 3 interconnected keys to students' communicative competence. Communicative competence is a set of behaviors that students must have to communicate what they know and how to get their needs met. Curriculum is comprised of common standards, learning progressions, and core content connections. Instruction is comprised of grade level lessons, accommodations, and systematic instruction. Assessment is comprised of both formative and summative measures. At the top of the triangle are the 3 post-secondary options as goals for all students: college, community, and career. Maryland has already piloted the NCSC assessments and has developed instructional units and started professional development for teachers and related service providers. Maryland will be implementing the NCSC assessments to students with the most significant disabilities during the 2015-2016 academic year. It will replace the alternate Maryland School Assessment, ALT-MSA, in reading and mathematics. The ALT-MSA Science Assessment will continue to be given in grades 5, 8, and 10. Students will take the NCSC assessments online with a paper and pencil option, and results will reflect 5 performance levels with descriptors for each level. ALT-MSA and NCSC results are part of what the School Performance Index, SPI, and scores will be reported to parents whose students participated. You now have an understanding of 1% alternate assessment and the NCSC option Maryland is part of. The second PowerPoint in this teaching module focuses on instruction and teacher resources.